right, let's do it.
Okay, so down here at the bottom left-hand corner of Naga Caverns, we have aTn.Socke spawning as our blue Protoss player, and his opponent in the top right-hand corner from Team SCV Life, that is Mr. Killer.
Wow, so we've got Killer versus Socke here. I thought we were all seeing Koreans today. This is we've got a Latin American versus a European.
No, that's not Dignitas.Killer. There's actually two pro players with the name Killer.
Yep.
There's Dignitas.Killer, who is the Zerg player for Team Dignitas, and then TSL.Killer, who is our red Protoss player and a Korean pro.
Okay.
Yep.
My confusion, my bad.
No
guys.
problem.
So, all right, so we've got Socke versus Killer from TSL. It's going to be a PvP. Why are we always starting things off with PvP? Every day of qualifier content, I swear to you, we have done a Protoss versus Protoss.
I just want to get the PvP over with and move on. So no, I'm joking. Actually,
I love PvP.
I like macro PvP, and I'm not just talking the War of the World style. I'm talking into where you start getting into like dynamic compositions where people will throw DTs in the mix, and you charge light Archon versus Void Red Colossus or something weird like that. You know, that really starts to get enjoyable. It's that very short, like 7 or 8 minute 4-gate on 4-gate PvP that kind of gets annoying for me.
Which is kind of like 90% of PvP.
It's getting better.
It is getting a little better. We've talked about this before. It's a matchup that doesn't have that much of a defender's advantage. So a lot of times it comes down to a situation where both players play each other so offensively that the game tends to end within the first 10 minutes or so.
And let's take a look. Both players putting up a simulator at about the same time. Socke is a little bit behind on his timings because he actually produced one additional probe for some extra economy and put up his Gateway 1 supply later, his Assimilator 1 supply later. So third will have, I'm sorry, I say third because that's what was written there, that's Killer, will have a little bit quicker timings if he decides to go for a super offensive 4-gate, or will have a couple of extra units ready, but really shouldn't make too much of a difference.
And we have a Cybernetics core now coming up for Killer with Socke just a few moments behind. So, you know, the opening start for PvP, the things you want to look out for are just those little minute build order differences, which can mean a little bit of an advantage in terms of army or economy for either side. We do see, though, Socke has grabbed that second gas, which is a big difference here. It looks like he's going to try to gear up to get that a lot more gas going in. We have Killer also doing the same thing.
Yeah, but Killer's putting up his second gas after second gateway, which tells me that he's probably going to go for a little bit more Stalker-heavy composition. Socke, on the other hand, could very well go into 3-gate Blink Stalker or something like that, but he's set up on timings that are going to be therefore pretty conventional, whether it's some sort of a defensive 3-gate Robo or a defensive 4-gate.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what both players try to do. I hesitate from calling out what a Protoss player is going to do for the first couple of minutes because you never really know, man. They could throw up some building that just completely makes us look like idiots.
That is the way of PvP because you're like, it looks like a 4-gate with lots of centuries, Dark Templar Shrine, oh crap.
Yes, something like that. Or a Stargate. Actually, that's the one thing you can be sure of. You'll almost never see a Stargate in PvP.
And was a little bit right about Killer, as he is going after quite a few early game stalkers. So
early stalker aggression off 2 gates.
Oh yeah, it's going to be either a 3 or 5 stalker rush to
actually
begin.
Both players doing about the same thing here.
Socke actually chrono boosting those out as well, but he does have a little bit proportionally more gas.
You know, that's another thing that I've noticed about PvP on this map, Naga Caverns, which is really the smallest map in the competitive pool right now. The fact that opening up with 2-gate Blink Stalker with chrono boost going down is a very powerful opening, and it actually forces the other Protoss player to kind of open up the same way too. Otherwise you risk just dying in the first 5 minutes of the game. So we do have Killer here with substantially more Stalkers, going to push that 1 Stalker away, but Socke does have 2 more in the back, and it's a 3 Stalker versus 3 Stalker war. And we do have on the production tab Killer getting not just Twilight Council as Socke is, but also adding a robotics facility.
Yeah, but we do have, Twilight Council coming up for both players. As you mentioned, I don't know if this is just going to be a robotics bay that's utilized for Blink Stalkers moving up to the high ground. Socke has to watch out, though. He did manage to pick off 1 Stalker. Oh, but he loses one of his own, negating that advantage he just got. Actually loses a second. Oh. He does manage to pick off a second Stalker out of Killer, so both players traded equally. Now, Socke does have the much earlier Blink, and it looks like, I would think he's going to have a greater infrastructure, but believe it or not, Killer is, okay, now adding gateways 3 and 4. There we go. So it is going to be 4-gate Blink Stalker on 4-gate Blink Stalker. Killer will have the Observer advantage, so he can utilize the low ground a little bit with that Blink, but Socke is going to have a couple extra units to compensate for that.
Well, that just means that Killer is going to have the ability to blink inside the main of Socke, whereas Socke will not. But Socke, like you said, will have a couple more Stalkers out with that in mind. And also in that last battle, Socke did come out ahead, killing off a couple more Stalkers than Killer did. And I was like, you know, that's a random force field, but that actually came into play pretty well because it blocked Killer's Stalker from running the direct path away from retreat. Rather, it had to kind of go around a convoluted path and it ended up going down anyways. Now, we do have Socke pushing out across the map, but Killer, I think, is in a pretty good position. I don't think Killer is in danger of dying to any early game pressure. The person that has to be worried about probably is Socke, because that observer will come into play.
Yeah, but Socke is going to end up with extra units here eventually. He already has the Sentry in the unit composition. He has more probes, albeit just one at the moment. And he didn't invest in Observer or Robotech, so he is going to be able to warp in a pretty good round of units and actually takes that extra resources that he had accumulated and decides to expand.
So risky.
Yeah, it really is.
We've talked about this in PvP before. Anytime a Protoss player expands, it's such a big gamble because there's so little defender's advantages in this matchup, not to mention that it's Naga Caverns, which has a really wide open natural. Now, those 400 minerals that went into the Nexus could have been 4 more Zealots or 3 more Stalkers, and Socke is going to have to combat TSL.Killer's attack here with that disadvantage in mind. If he can hold, however, that economy is really going to come in handy, and we have Killer now moving out, realizing the Nexus is going up with that Observer, and Killer knows he has to make an attack right here to try to stop Socke in his tracks.
And Socke has a couple more units coming down, but of course he had utilized a few too many resources. Maybe throw a couple more sentries in there, I don't know.
Ooh.
For Guardian Shield, he blinks up aggressively though. Socke doing a little bit of damage, but loses not quite. There we go, does lose the second Stalker, so a little bit of an advantage eked out there for Killer.
Yeah, both players actually fighting each other out. Great blink from both sides. We haven't seen the Stalker go down yet. There are Stalkers now continuing to fall. And an aggressive blink by Killer, thinking he's got the advantage. And I've got to agree with him. He has enough Stalkers to break through here. But Socke will fall back to his reinforcements in his main. Remember, this is a problem with expanding. Will Socke be able to out macro at this point? He can afford to suffer a little bit of economic damage because he has 2 Nexus now with the ability to double Chrono Boost. But it looks like Killer may have enough Stalkers to break Socke back. What a close PvP.
It's close, but Killer's really reinforcing very well at the moment, and his economy is still just fine to support this for a while. And if this Nexus goes down, then Socke is actually at a huge disadvantage because he's already sacked a couple of his initial probes that he invested in. Looks like he's pulling all of his probes at the moment. See if we get some good blink micro here, and enough though that it's going to put him really, really far behind. And he realizes it and is forced to leave the game.